All right, today's session in restoring, you have the option to use two bolsters. Now, if you don't have two bolsters, it's fine. You would use blanket rolled up at the base, or you could use, a stack of blankets or beach towels. So if you don't have the bolster, you're just going to have a blanket at the base where I have the bolster right now. If you happen to have another cushion that's dense, kind of a thick, you can play with it. If you have a pillow that you're using, it's probably not going to be as good as a yoga blanket. So I want you to have a wall space at the base, a blanket that's in a single fold or even lower at the back. Everyone has a bolster here, so that's a significant support. You're going to have the bolster lengthwise on the mat. So I have my bolster close to the base, to the wall. But here's the interesting part. I'm short. Some of you are not as short as me, and nobody is. So I want you to sit at the edge of your bolster and just let your feet touch towards the wall. And you want to find that it's comfortable enough to bend your knees this much. You're going to be lowering down, so it's going to streamline the front. But first things first, we're just bolster or two bolsters or bolster and blanket right now. So sit at the short end of the bolster towards the wall. The flat bolster should be in the middle, lengthwise. If you have a round or a flat, it's at the base. Another thing you could use actually instead of the bolster or blanket is like 2 blocks in mid-height. That makes it really firm under your ankles. So when I lower back, I'm going to step up onto the blanket or bolster. And then as I lower my spine, remember I'm in the short, right at the edge of the bolster. So when I lower back, I want the bolster to still keep lifting up my chest. So it feels like I'm kind of diving, restorative diving, back dive. Okay, so when I lean back, my ribs, they not only poof out, but you can feel it when you inhale through the nose, the expansiveness in the lungs. So I want my shoulder blades to feel like they're kind of pressing into the bolster. This is like, I can't believe I got perfect on the first try, but looks like I did. So then I press my feet into the wall, and then I'm going to keep letting the chest lift. Now, it might feel funny, like whatever you've got on, your pants, that kind of thing, it might push things around. So really sense your physicality with the support. Whatever stays on and supportive, it might move a little bit, but really feel the raw sensation of your bones set up. You're setting them up. And then you'll add a sandbag. Now, sand could go on the thigh lids or on the rib, right? The whole crest of the rib cage. I prefer sand on the thighs on this because I would do just about anything to help my hip flexors out, even if it's something as simple as this. If you happen to have 2 sandbags, go 1 thigh, 1 ribs, but you might want some space here for the ribs just to interact with your focus on breathing through the nose. Stretch your elbows out, or let the elbows be down by the sides and down with the hands. You choose. And take a few moments. If your feet don't touch the wall, if you've got a blanket rolled at the base instead of a bolster, you might find that you've got to get a little farther down because the blanket's maybe lower than a bolster. You can always, again, put blocks there as well. But I want you to feel that you're lifting and the props are supporting to kind of lift you up and help ascend the movement of the breath and then descend in the diaphragm. So let's come into the shape. Let your sand be where it's at. If you've got no sand, no problem. Resting the eyes back into the brain and feeling just that awareness, if you choose to breathe through the nose, that does create that moist, warm air that goes into the lungs, right? If you breathe through the mouth, it tends to be drier. It's not a good filter. So the nose is a filter. So feeling if you can let your mouth relax and just attempt to breathe in and feel the movement practice of the waist, the movement in the torso, deep inside the diaphragm, motions down towards the abdominal organs. And then on exhale, it relaxes back towards the base of the heart. So rest your eyes. Use the props to give you enough support, and if it just doesn't feel like enough, you can always reset, get closer to the wall, lower back down, but use that bolster to give you a little bit of intrigue in your breathing muscles. If you tend to kind of tighten up in the core when you inhale, just see if you can do the opposite on the inhale. Breathe in, expand in the center, and then exhale. Just let gravity have that cycle of breath back to the earth. If you need anything more under your neck, you can always roll your blanket under your head a little higher. But inhaling for a count of 3 to 4. And letting go, empty the lungs. You scan the feeling of the feet, right? They have some preference of probably reaching somewhere. So you might find the wall is there for you to reach to with your feet. But if you decide that you don't want to push into the wall, that's okay. If the knees don't like that, you can soften. You can always bring the bottoms of your feet to the floor in constructive rest. This is also helpful too. Depends on how your back is responding. Okay, now finally, feel where or maybe bring your awareness to this expansiveness of the ribs, stretching open between the ribs, the intercostals. And then if you have sand on the thighs or ribs, slide it away and take cobbler's pose. So with that bolster below you, you don't have to use that for cobbler. It's kind of, well, maybe it works for some people. If you have long legs, it's going to work great because you can reach down. For me, it's easier to bring my feet up to the bolster that I'm on. Okay, so it just depends on your length. That's it, and your mobility maybe in the hip joint. You could also put your feet on the floor between the two. The soles of the feet to each other is a little easier, right, if it's closer towards the groins. But I want you to spend just a moment. This is a moment of circulation in the leg pits, the groins, to start to stimulate that flow of lymph, or the drain of lymph for the support of the immune system. So we still have this expression of the ribs. This is our big science project today. And the stretch of the adductors. Okay. Now, noticing that, of course, the back has to really arch here. It really has to flow into this natural curve. So take the last moment of really just emphasizing that. So your spine is arching, lumbar arch, and then you'll just simply bring the knees to point up, bottoms of the feet are off of the bolster, and then we'll lift up our hips, so push down into the feet, and you're going to naturally slide a little bit back towards the upper spine. It's kind of like you create a little bit of a stand into the shoulders. Now lift up the hips, reach down with one or both hands. I sometimes have to get one. I'm going to push the bolster, so now it's across, horizontal, across the mat underneath, and I'm going to pull it up under the back of my pelvis and then lower down my pelvis onto the bolster. But it's kind of built with other things. The pelvis also has the lumbar connected. You can't get away from that. So I would find a way that you could be on the bolster and feel, oh, okay, I've got a lot of lumbar support here. The hip rim is able to broaden. And then you'll take a ball or a block, if you don't have a ball, just simply bring one knee in first so that you can adapt in that part of the spine. And if it feels like when you bring one knee in that you don't have enough support with the bolster, then move the bolster a little higher underneath you, because you don't want to have the bolster in a bad spot for support. So bring a knee in, make sure that you feel like, okay, I can squiggle around here. I can wiggle, and then bring the opposite knee and add a ball between them. And with that ball support, feel that you can squeeze into the ball or the block, preferably ball. But you're going to squeeze in, and noticing that when you push in, you squeeze and the muscles and the adductor line, they grip. Now lift up the feet, lift up the whole legs, right? Legs too, and squeezing in. Okay, so let's take just one more time where we bend the knees and we keep that squeeze. You might touch onto the thighs so you know they're going inwards. They're not just kind of neutralizing. They can do that in an hour or so. Okay, and then lift up the legs back to lengthening. Okay, in between the two motions, I wasn't squeezing that much. So now when you squeeze into the ball, see if you can let your weight fall back a little bit more into your upper back. And then decide if you want your blanket to fold one more time. I'm going to fold mine. Feels like my neck could use that. Some of us will be just fine without that extra fold. The blanket's packed down really well. Probably any blanket you have is going to be smushed down after a minute. So if it feels like it's under your neck, not under your shoulders, feels better, then do that so your throat can relax. Okay. Arms stretch open to the shape of T, bend through the legs, and then let the knees go side to side. Okay. Not with the idea of wagging your tail, although it kind of does wag a little bit here, but that's kind of something that you might work with when you push into your feet. It's a good thing to study. How do you have to kind of push into the base to wag a tail? But when you motion the knees side to side, hopefully a hip lifts when you go to one side, the opposite hip is lifting. And then continue that pattern of movement and let the waist stretch. Your knees might move down away, and then as they go back over to the other side, the waist extends. The arms being open helps out the stretch through the torso. You can analyze it, but you can also just do it, right? Just continue that motion to warm up the spine in the paraspinals, right? The muscles along the spine. Breathing. Right? Feeling that focus of the elasticity of the ribs or the lungs, you could say, when you're breathing in through the nose. Right? It's definitely going to expand the capacity of the lungs when we're on our back twisting. Okay, next time you come back center, let's bring the knees in, squeeze the ball when you bring the knees as close towards the chest as they comfortably can go. Okay, and then relax the grip and put the ball down to the side and, kind of feel, is your back enough on the bolster? Do you need to change it up or move into the center or to the right or left? And then take a belt. And if you have a belt that you can buckle up so you create a big loop, that would be nice. If you don't, if you have like something that doesn't have a clasp on it, you can tie it in a knot on this one. But you do want to have a loop of sorts. So this is a pretty big loop, huh? So I'm going to lift up my belt and tuck it to the ball, both feet together. And as I lift up, I'm going to slide down where the buckle is so I can adapt to my needs. And then push the feet out to a wide stance. And you might be tightening the belt down so that you can actually be in it with a wide reach with the legs without too much trembling. Okay, So if it's trembling a lot, it generally helps to make the loop smaller and probably to hold it with both hands. Unless you can do this one-handed, I guess that's an option. Okay, so when I hold on, I'm actually trying to get a feeling of how to soften my knees, a little micro motion, kind of bend it a little bit. And then this time today, feel if you can just slightly turn the feet out a little bit. Yeah, using the belt hold is kind of helpful for this because I can track that sensation of movement with my feet. Okay, I feel it all the way kind of into my lower abdominals. It's slight, it's upside down, so that's why you might feel that. Okay, now if you're not holding the belt, you might have to tighten it down. Sometimes you can feel that movement of the feet. Okay, now change it so that the feet start to turn in. And so the upper thigh, right, it's all this pool of, it's a kind of a waterfall, right, of circulation in the lymph in the leg pit. It pools down, right, to the thigh lids or the hips themselves. And we're trying to bring some blood, right, some circulation to the hips. Okay, so the feet don't have to turn in a lot, but a little bit of rotation from the femur, right, top of the leg, turning all the way down through the legs. They might look a little bit silly, but that's just kind of how we look in this class, right? I know, and I record myself. I mean, that's kind of funny. Okay, so hold the back of the leg and notice when you just hold it and the feet turn in that there of course is this rotation that's going to end up in our hip. Okay, so bend the knees, reach up, get a belt, pull the belt towards you so your feet go together, and then hold a little higher and lower the left leg down. Now if you happen to have a bolster under your foot, you're either going to like it or you're not going to like it at all on this one. So I change time to time on what I think about something under my foot on this. So if it feels too much strain on the knee, just kick it away. If it's a bolster or a blanket, okay? So hold the belt together with the left hand. Right leg is up and stretch your right arm open first and cross the right leg over to the left. It could be straight up or you know what, it's going over and down. So it's not going to be at hip level likely once it lowers down. Okay. And see if you can be working with the shape and focus on how can I move my shape, my leg shape, so I explore the circulation in my hip. So my waist is pretty comfortable right now. Breathing through the nose. Of course, breathe how you're comfortable. So if it's so difficult to breathe, to do the out breath with the nose, you could do what you need. Okay, remember it might be even more hydrating, right? If you focus on nose breathing, you'll be probably less thirsty. It's kind of drawing to go the other direction with the mouth. So just noticing, be kind to yourself if it doesn't happen, except a couple times. And as you are holding on to that leg, you know, you're just holding on to the foot, really. But I feel it in the top of my leg, not so much my foot. My foot's not feeling much except holding the belt. So let's bend that right knee. And when you pull with the left hand, bring the leg back center. And let's just bring the left leg up and cross the right ankle to the left lower thigh, right, connected just above the knee. Hold the back of the left thigh. So you're in reclining figure four pose, reclining pigeon pose. This is a good way, since we are going to try pigeon today in our seated shape, to just notice how your knee angle is now. This is kind of your natural angle for your knee. This is about where you're going to want it when you get into the seated version. Nothing unusual, just feel that you hold the back of the left thigh pull. Okay, let the back get a light stretch. Breathe. It can only help. Okay, however you do it, okay? So as I move my belt, I'm going to keep the figure 4 for a moment, get a hold of my belt off of my right foot, and just kind of see, okay, the muscles on the left thigh are in more, they're kind of more reserved right now, right? They're not becoming more flexible in the moment. So I want you to let the left foot just lower, but it's off of the mat, it's off the bolster, it's not on anything. You know, the right knee might get really close to you, that you might get out of the pose, it's too much now. But when you do come out of this variation, I want you to see if you can do this with the legs on their own. So instead of holding them, slide the right foot. If you need to hold it, you do it, but slide the foot off. There's no competition. Okay, get the belt under your left foot and then work on the expression of the leg bones, right? So I like to kind of play with, I know the idea sometimes is get in the shape, but how do you get there, right? There's a flow to get there. So the leg lowers down, my right hand holds the belt, my left leg is taken on a walk over to the right side of my space, not very far. And it's a different motion in the back on the second side. Likely you have one area that might feel more blocked. Maybe you're perfectly even, but there's usually some science to one side to the next and comparing. Sometimes it's best to let the eyes just close. Just get that feel of the hip and how this radiates from the side band. I feel it right now kind of stuck on the leg experience versus getting my waist to feel the stretch as well. So just doing what is possible with relaxing your breath. Feel the breath merging in the lower back. So even though you might feel, okay, it's a front part of me that feels breathing, expansive wise, it's in your ribs, which are obviously in your back. Right? You got the whole 3D experience with breathing. Okay, now the right foot could still be on a bolster. Some of us might have kicked it away by now. And if you're not with anything under your right foot, it doesn't have to touch the wall, but it could. Now bend the left knee and feel when there's a little resistance. I pull with the right hand on the belt, and then when I set it back in center, my left knee is pointing out to the left side. I guide my right knee to the left foot. I guess you don't really need the belt for this, but it was nice for a moment. So hold on. If you need a belt, you could put it under the right thigh to pull the leg towards you. Okay. There's all kinds of ways you could add props to this one. But as you're holding on to the back of the right thigh, yeah, give yourself the most basic motion, right? Contribute really a little bit at a time. So it's even okay if I let go of my leg and lower my right foot to the floor and try to let that left thigh stretch open. This might be a better version of figure 4. I almost always remember it on the second side. What's the better version? Maybe it is. Okay. You might find that if you hold the back of the leg, you want to lift up the leg you're holding. You want to kick it upwards. You know, even if it doesn't add as much intensity to your hip, it's okay. It feels better. I think it's better, right? You don't have to find that it's discomfort to get anywhere. So elongate the back. Feel that you pull the back of the right thigh for the back to stretch. This is like back care 101, right? Moving knees towards chest, however they go. Whether it's 2 knees, 1 knee at a time. Okay. So with this kind of awareness into our bending arena for knees, we're going to add into the hip flexors a little deeper. Okay, so as you uncross through that left ankle, just simply hold on to the knees, the patellas, patellar preference. Do you have a patellar preference? And circling with the bolster under you. Go both directions, maybe 2 to 3 times. Counting isn't required. And then feel where it's right and neutral. It's not too close to your chest. It's not too far down to the floor. And the thighs might feel a little bit of pressure to do this position. Okay? So bring your hands down to your bolster. Now, some of us have a bolster at the base or a blanket. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but if you need to kick your bolster away, it's okay. So my knees are going to scoop in, my feet are going to lift on this one, and I'm going to slide. So you'll probably notice, oh, if my legs kick back, oh, the bolster goes away really quick. It's not science, but it is true. So I'm going to push my bolster down next to my other bolster. I like this setup. Then I have a little bit of power at the base. Blanket a little bit lower, right? Less height, better for my neck. Some of you might like more height, better for your neck, okay? Take a ball or a block, place it between the knees. And if it's a block, you want it at its lowest setting, okay? And pushing down into your heels, really work with this lift of the pelvis and the arms overhead. Yeah, and stay with it for a few moments, feeling where it climbs up your back, right? What's climbing up your back? Well, it's the circulation climbs up your back. Okay, you can't see it. All right. And now lower down through the spine and kind of milk it, like feeling, some of us get speedy on this one, but go slow so you can feel all the micro motions in the back. Maybe not cellular, but you can feel the back relax down. Okay. Take the hands down to the ground in the next few moments so that you can feel the spine print. I know, I wonder what your spine print would be, huh? That'd be a cool mat, like you have a thermal mat where it would take your spine print. So feel how the back is in its little itty bitty arch. It's a good arch. Okay, let the abdominals relax, breathing. They move with the breath. And then we're going to go about 3 more. So we're going to do 4 total for sure at your very own pace. So you're going to lift the hips up, extend the arms behind you. Yeah, it's not how high I lift my hips. Oh, we'll get there. We'll get high hips, but at this point, just let them motion. The ball is just a spacer. So that means a block would be just as well, right? The ball is kind of a responsive surface, right? It's lighter, so that's nice. But you could squeeze it a little bit too, right? You could squeeze in. Okay, now one more time. You may have done 3, you may have done 4 more, who knows? But when you do that lift, notice the pressure at the base of the spine, that whole pack of muscles that go in towards the buttocks, right, the glutes. They definitely get firm. So to work on that awareness and the lower back area into the glutes, you're going to take a block. And I would have, if you've already got a block between the knees, go ahead and lower down and take it out. If you've got a ball, I sometimes like having the ball for this. I just leave it and see what happens with my thighs. So take a block set. If you, like I said, if you have a block there between, you're going to take it out and use your 2 blocks. So you've got your blocks at the side of the hips. They're at the second setting. 2 blocks, 2 hips, 1 spine. Here we go. So lift the hips up and slide the blocks together and push them up so they are supporting your lumbar. It shouldn't hurt. So if you put the blocks too high and it jabs a rib, then it's just too high. But it's going to feel like a load off of your efforting here with lifting up. Okay? Okay, get yourself coordinated here. If you decide you don't want the ball, it's not something you're enjoying, it's too much to think about, you could just, drop it. You could probably drop it down between and it won't hurt anything. Okay, so here we are. We're going to straighten out the legs. I like the ball sometimes to have something that I have to kind of meditate a little bit on. And to be honest, I don't think I want it anymore there. So I'm just going to let my legs relax. And if the ball stays, so be it. Okay, shoulders roll back in and towards the spine. Arms reach down. They try to reach, but it's tricky to reach arms when the shoulders are moving towards the spine, to reach them behind you and down. Even though you think it's on the ground, it's not. It is still behind you. The floor is a prop. And imagine without it, we wouldn't be in a still position like this. But again, if the ball is just too much, you can always widen your legs a little bit. That feels kind of nice, just to have a stance of the legs. And then feeling the shoulders back, ribs lift. How about that for helping your knees? Because I can tell the hyperextension could come in here, but if I work on ribs up, expansive, it affects a little bit on my knee bend. Okay, so you check that out. If you don't like the legs straight, you can also have the knees bending, feet on the floor or on the bolster, which I think is better, but some people like this with the feet on the ground. Okay. So take about another 3 breaths with supported bridge pose. Remember, we started with this pose, but we had the bolster a little different. Okay. And now as you slide the feet back in, so the knees point up, feet push down, bolster or floor. Try this one on. So the arms are down by the sides. The inside of the arms, the elbows should be towards the ceiling. If I was to go back in my yoga study, I would probably work on this one a little bit more. Because as you age and you have habits, right? Some of those habits in your poses are hard to shift, but I would give more time to working my upper arms and the circulation to help my chest and my posture, right, from my upper back. So as you push down into your feet, feel where that develops tension in the buttocks. You gotta have some tension to create strength, huh? Gotta have resistance. So push firm down to your feet, lift up the hips. You might go, oh, I can get this. If it feels too much on the knees, move the weight back into your upper back so more weight goes back to the shoulder stand of it. Okay, no rocking your head back and forth. If you do, I still appreciate you, but just be careful of your neck, right? Careful of that twist. And then if you got blocks, you got to move them a little bit to the side. I know the arms feel a little bit handicapped moving blocks like this, but you're going to move the blocks to the side. And as you lower the spine, ease the back into the ground. Imprint the tight areas of your back, right? The rhomboids, the traps. Okay, now as the spine lowers, we're going to winch away for the knees. And while we do that, the knees go side to side, the hips stay centered. They don't really wag much here. But you're going to probably want to make your blanket a little bit higher under your head, just that back to that quarter fold. And just feel when the knees go to one side and your hips have some ease to move as well. We're going to try a full hip crossover now. So from here, You can either keep the bolster under your feet, cross the left leg over the right leg, knees to the right, and add sand here on the side of the thigh. Okay, the ball here. I prefer the bolster on the side of my mat, truly, so I just push the bolster over, and you might make sure that you watch out where that ball went here. Okay, you could push the bolster, if you have another bolster, away from the base and cross the left leg over to the right. Okay, so the ball goes to the sacrum. Now you could again do it the same way with your feet on the bolster. The leg would be just a different crossing. It would be hugging the right leg entirely. Okay, now look in your side clutter. See if you can find something to put on the side of the left thigh. And as you put that sand on, remember it's actually nothing you need to remember. You're in the present, like where put the sandbag. Some people really like it across the hip, diagonal. I tend to hold firm with the part of the sandbag that's closest to my hip bone. And then I just push, right? And try to kind of plow into the lateral rotator. Bend the bottom leg. That's pretty important here. That's valuable. Bending the bottom leg creates the twist in the abdominal organs. And then, yes, you can roll your head on this one to the left. Or roll your eyes. Okay, right hand rests on the ground or on you. And the eyes relaxing. And strengthen the in-breath and out-breath. The breaths could be short, right? They don't have to be these lengthy. But with a twist, you want the abdominal, just simply how you feel with your abdominals. You don't want to try to clench them or tighten them, squeeze, or suck them in. You want to have them move with the breath to strengthen the diaphragm. So it strengthens with the resistance from the position. So just twisting is enough resistance for the breathing muscles. All you got to do is create the shape, create the pose, and breathe. And sometimes you might not feel it till later, or if you don't do it for a while, that there's benefit from it. So in the moment, you might feel like you're efforting a bit. Now notice where the weight is on the right side into the hip. I want to have that left hip. Of course, you think it's on top of your right hip, but you know that one side might be a little bit farther over to the right than the other. So you can kind of feel like you're wagging your tail as much as you could on this. Really get that weight bearing into the bottom hip. And find the stillness. And the final awareness here might be, some of us might want to straighten the top leg. If you don't have any space over on that side, it could be difficult, huh? But some of us might like that. Just lengthen the top leg, even with the sandbag on it. If you have your feet on the bolster, you can lengthen both legs to the side. Okay, so that would still be with the ball, if you have that use. And try to get a little bit more reach out of the hip itself. Okay, just the awareness of reaching. And then slide the sand away, but let's give a try so that in between, remove the ball. Now, if you have a ball, try this. So you're going to roll to your back and then put the ball at the sacrum, so the base of the spine. A little bit of core work here. Hands on belly, so just around navel center area, and then lift up both legs. Working that lower abdominals. Okay. Now you try to balance. You might be a little right, you might be a little left. Your elbows might want to push out a little further to hold you. You might put your elbows down by the sides and the hands up in robot arms. You might want to lengthen your neck purposely. Not worrying about how the feet are, right? They just are feet, okay? They're feet on the top of it all. Okay, and then feeling if you can soften the knees and bending. And alternate reaching a leg down and another leg down like you're almost bicycling the legs. Try to lengthen your lower back like you're scooping the tailbone under. You're tucking the tailbone under. That's pretty interesting on this one because it's hard to keep that motion for the spine, the tailbone, when you've got this balancing. Then lower both feet down, push into them just a little bit, taking the ball to the right glute and massaging. Now, if you've got your feet on the bolster, if you had it for the last pose, it's kind of better because your feet are up on something. You're pushing, you know, your feet. Right? So if I have my feet, for instance, I'll just do it anyway because it's better. My feet are on a bolster, then I have the feet up so I can push down into the ball. Hips go side to side. Get real motion, wagging your tail side to side. The ball goes a little bit to the sacrum. That'll feel good. If you don't have a ball, you could do windshield wiper with your back firm on the ground, knees side to side, swishing back and forth. With your feet on height, put the ball to the left buttock or the other side. Yeah, it's hip movement, but it's also knees motioning a little bit. And your experience might be detailed different. You might find, well, no, that's not how it works for me. It's if I move my chest or I turn my head left and right, or only left. Take a few more moments here, squishing and smushing the ball. The pressure and the movement is massage into the glute. Glutes, even on one side, we call glutes. There's several. Okay, now lower easily. Okay, get ready for that second crossover. So those of you with a bolster under your feet, you lift the right leg, cross it over the left leg, knees swish over to the left side, ball to the sacrum, sand on the side. Those of us that like the bolster on the side yard, we go to push it over or carry it over. And you might scoot to the right side of your mat so you can cross over. Okay, but this is kind of the final of our back series because we're doing it a little backwards today. So when you're here on this last crossover pose for this part, just noticing if there is a kind of a sleepiness in your back or if you're trying to start to get up in the respiratory tree. So I want you to feel where that right arm is open. Sand on the outer right thigh if possible. You can push it down towards the knee or keep it higher on the hip. And the left hand can rest on, and might even feel like the second side. Somehow your rotation's different, right? It's maybe it divvies up different from one side to the next. It's pretty likely. So see if you can feel where it's about the same place you had last side, maybe to the navel center or a little bit higher up onto the ribs. And let your head roll to the right. Blanket or no blanket is under your head is up to you. Feel how the movement of the chest is expansive when you breathe in right through the nose, right? So I want you to feel more of the ribs as well, because if I focus on mouth breathing, it's pretty much all in my chest. It's kind of congestive, right? That's a whole topic there, but breathing in through the nose, you can feel it expand out through the ribs, between each rib, all the way around the back, and relaxing your throat. Just let it be soothing for the nervous system. And it's just the right amount of air that goes in. It's not too much. It's not forceful. Each time it goes in, it filters right through the nose. Okay, now when we shift the weight, this time we're going to go all the way towards up. Okay, so up for us today is hands and knees, really. So I want you to move your sand off of that hip. And when we come around to getting up, make sure the ball is not, you're not going to lean into that. You can roll back onto your back and roll straight up. I like to make it so my obliques get a little stretch. So I prefer just to simply roll to the side and come up so it's easy. And then when you come all the way up, I want you to face towards the wall this time. So you're going to be blanket center. So it's in a quarter fold. I have a pretty good size fold of the blanket here. Under my knees. Well, it's not quite under my knees yet, but right here. And then if you have one bolster, I want you to have that across the mat horizontal. If you have two, and one of your bolsters is a round bolster, you're going to put that here, okay? So if you have a round bolster, you're going to push the standard bolster, the flat, to the wall, right up at the wall, and then have your round one here, okay? But if you have one bolster, you're going to have that bolster here, and you're going to have a couple blankets on the other side. But if you have two bolsters, don't worry about the blanket. Well, actually, you will want a blanket, so I take that back. See, I'm always a student, huh? Okay, toss it on the other side so you have your other blanket. Okay, hands on ground, not on blanket. The bolster might be touching your forearms, but that's a good thing because you want to try to stretch that skin anyway. It's especially upside down like this. Well, maybe you don't call this upside down skin, but I think it kind of is different. So when I arch the spine, I'm going to have my feet touching a little bit, at least my big toes. So it's an easier arch to the spine, chest is reaching. And then as you round the back, feel the tailbone motioning. Now, it might not push all the way down. I don't want you to make that just so, but let the spine stretch. Breathing. This one is really, I have a challenge on just the nose work on this one, especially, I don't know, maybe I just did so much the other way. It's hard to change it, but feel the traction of the breath. So you go slow. I think breathing through the nose is going to be a little easier when we're off of our back, because that's a harder way to breathe anyway on your back. Okay, you can tell that when people have trouble with that sleeping, that sound that comes is when you're on your back, right? So round the back. Okay. Last but not least, choice for everybody. Okay, keep with cat-cow or take a dog pose. Toes under for dog pose. Feet toes under. Really feel the stretch of the foot. If that's tough for you, do the best you can, but you want to feel the foot, the different parts of a foot, even though it just feels like one slab at the bottom of you, okay? When you lift up, you're going to alternate bending your knees, okay? So just see if you can get a feel of that, socks or no socks, just bending the knees. It's reasonable that they feel just like one piece because they're usually stuck in boxes, right? Some of us put our feet in boxes and walk around. So feel the feet move a little itty bit. And then just bend the knees back again. So even this is good for my feet. Just toes under this. This is good. Plenty. Okay. Now, you're going to use your bolster or either bolster for this. We're going to come into side sage. I want you to lean your right hip down. And I think I like this version, but I like to change things up all the time. So So I have an interesting practice. Bolster, any kind you got. You put it here in the center. I'm sitting on the blanket here. I got one blanket, and then those of you that have a lot of blankets, you're going to stack them all up on this side. You'll see. So let's say you have no bolster on this side. I want you closer to the wall. If you don't have a bolster at the wall, but a blanket, get really close. Take a sandbag nearby, bring it over next to your right knee, and a ball for some of us. Not all of us use a ball in this, but place it on the inside of the left knee if you're using it. Okay. Now when you lean down, your arm is between the blanket and the bolster. Everyone should have a bolster in the center. And you're going to take the sand if you're using that. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm excited about sand on this version today. So my head goes down and I'm reaching to the bolster. Okay, now those of you that don't have one here, and some, actually all of us might want to just reach for the wall. Okay, if you go, wait a minute, this blanket's too low for me, add more height. The most you would add would be the bolster under your head. If you have two and you got a flat one, but it's just a lot of neck flexion, and none of us want, even though you're on the side of your head, none of us want, yeah, I'm too close. None of us want more neck rounding. Okay, so this is working on that. So if I lean back and I'm kind of towards the back of my head, this is good work for my neck. Now, if the arm doesn't like lowering down, I can bring it up to the wall. That's why we're using the wall for this one today, so you get that maximum reach with the torso. It's out of the torso now into the ribs. Yeah, and the belly gets quite a workout here, just trying to hold this range. Okay, so arm is resting between. If the blanket feels too low, add the second one. It's okay if you add the second one, or if you have just one blanket here, you could pull it to the left and then fold it one more time. And to me, that's like a perfect fit. But it looks kind of funny, but it doesn't matter. You want it to feel like a fit. Okay? So blanket or no blanket add-on, it's okay. But you'll notice my chin pulls up. You might go, wow, I've got more flexion. And none of us want more deeper flexion. So that's not something we really admire. And it's not really good for the spine. So find what works for you. Whether you go up higher and you go, wait, it felt good, but I don't think it's right. Change it. Give a few more breaths here. Stretch the left arm. If it's on the side of you, this is a whole different way of doing the pose. And you're not so sure about it, you can go back to your old way. Okay, now finally, if the arm is up, you're trying to roll the left shoulder back. If the arm is on the side, you can still roll your shoulder back. Okay, it doesn't have to be overhead. Okay, now when we go onto our back, we're going to take a brief chest opener. So slide the sand to the left, and then elbows to the bolster, and then come back. So the blanket, if you happen to have kept this blanket under your rear, it actually might be kind of nice to have here. So I'm going to lower back, and my blanket is pretty low, and I'm going to work on that. I'm going to let that be what I work with. So I don't want my head again to have more of that flexion in my spine. So I'll have my blanket low. Ooh, this is a gasp, right, for your breath. And you can tell how this could be kind of a stressful breath if you open your mouth out with this one. So breathing in through your little funnel. And let the exhalation concentrate. Okay, lots of arch. Shoulders back and down. Now let your body enjoy that reach. And see if you can use this, this stretch to help you get to your next side stretch. So you already have, some of us, we're just used to getting the front area more open because it's what we see most of the time, right? We know we want to present it, but our sides and our back don't get that same attention. So it can in this practice. So when I roll, I try to let my body naturally, and try it if you can, right? Roll naturally to the left. You're probably going to need to lift yourself up for a moment and adjust. So I'm going to adjust so my ribs are going to land on this bolster, whether it's the flat or the round bolster, either one, and then take a ball on the inside of the right leg. It could be towards the thigh, could be to the knee. Okay. Most of us find, I've noticed if it's closer to the knee, it seems to be easier to kind of move the leg back and forth and adjust it. But you have a second foot to help you with that, the left foot. Okay. Sand comes about, and you get to decide if all this prop stuff is just too much. Your main thing is the bolster under your waist, the sand on your side. Yeah, and you might decide, this extra bolster didn't do it for me, I'm going to get rid of it. That's okay. And then let the left arm reach, or the right arm reach overhead. You might have to make change to your accommodation here with where you are with your props. Okay. If you have to balance the sand, it's probably not in the right spot, right? If you have to keep resetting it. So let it be easy. If it's better to have it higher up on the ribs, it doesn't have to hurt your shoulders at all. You can have it on the ribs. Okay, so feel that reach with the right arm. Okay, feel the armpit chest, so good. Get this armpit chest open, the lymph in this area. This is good to open up. It's the armpit area and the leg pit where there's a lot of lymph. So, yeah, open up the chest. You might be impressed with your ability to do that, right? Even if you've got some things about knee, hip, shoulder, but the ribs can really get more mobile and deeper stretch with the lungs. Reorganize the spaces you breathe into. Okay, if there's any little micro space that you want to feel the breath into, take that now. If you need to move your arm down, do that. Maybe it goes across to the left, maybe it goes just out in the air to the right. Okay, so we're gonna bring it together with the bands of the waist down into the IT segment, right? Even though a lot of people call it IT band, it's really called IT iliotibial segment. Okay, so when I have this leg reaching back, my right leg, and I can use the ball to kind of heal the support of the inside of the knee, I think it's quite helpful. Okay, now you can feel how that right side has a little work with the sand. So let the sand go. Okay, or you could push it. And feel your bones roll left. Now, obviously the bigger bones are what we kind of manipulate our movement with, our hands, our feet, but this center body, lots of little bones. So feel that you can get your spine to stretch behind you just by rounding your back like you would in cat pose. And then come on around to that left hip and push to get up. Okay, now if you've got all this round bolster, go ahead and put that off to the side. Actually, you can put it down to the base of your mat away from the wall. And then take your flat. Everyone should have a flat here and a blanket behind it. Lots of space back there. So come on up to sit on your bolster. And you got to have more space probably than I'm creating here. So scoot You can get rid of this blanket too, but scoot your bolster. You're gonna find out why. Okay, so what we just had was the right leg, yeah, that we're stretching back. So take a cobbler's pose. You're gonna find out if you're far enough away, I guess, when you get there. But feet together, knees out, cobbler. You can add blocks under the knees. You can hold your ankles and lean forward. You probably feel good to do a little bit of that, a little leaning forward. So feeling that reach of the torso. Add blocks if you like. Even if you decided 2 seconds ago you weren't going to use them, maybe they're going to be better now. Okay, but when you lean forward, feel for the inner thigh here. So when I stretch my torso and then my heart forward, I think when you're inhabiting your body, it's not like you feel like, oh, the weight of your heart, right, when you're stretching, but let it be weight, let it be traction, let it be that gravity that moves you forward. A heart drop, okay. All right, so when you're leaning front, feeling for the hip, if you've got no blocks, it's going to be more sensation probably. I like the blocks because even if this is a permissible my joints, it's a little tough on the sacroiliac joint if I just crank away with both feet together, the whole connector, right? So a little bit of height just kind of fluffs it up back here. It makes it a little bit more, I don't know, not as tense right in the SI area. So just give your joints space. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go to pigeon pose, and not all of us are going to want to do pigeon. So I'll show the variation now. That'll be your traditional pigeon, and then I'll show a variation. I don't want to say modification, but I did. But they're both going to work the hip. So right foot to the bolster, right knee points forward, left leg stretches back. And this is where you don't know if you're close enough to the wall, but I don't want you to have your foot lifting up the wall. It could touch the wall, but it's not like you can't push back into it. So this is pigeon pose, right? So the knee is out. It's just like we did on our back with our foot to our knee, but now our foot is to our bolster instead of the knee, so it's a bigger stretch because we got space between our knee because of the bolster. Okay, so those of you here can lower down on a blanket, on another bolster. You can kind of hug a bolster on this one. This is a nice one for hug a bolster. Okay, if you're not going to take this version, that's those of you that are not, here's your variation. You're going to sit on the bolster like you are and cross the right leg forward to the left leg. And I would put it on a block, the foot in front or the bolster if you have an extra one. Foot goes on some height. And then your hands are going to reach back on the bolster and lean forward. Okay, now if this is too much, add a ball, add a block. You can add a ball so it's under the left thigh, or some of us will like it under the right thigh. So if you got some knee stuff, and this is like, doesn't feel good without anything here, I'm stuck. You actually would put the ball under your right thigh. So if you get some knee goo, you need some knee goo, this is a good one to get that lift. It's a good homework one. So trying to keep my core intact and lifting, and then tilt forward. I like this. Stretches the adductor a lot with the ball under. So there we go. We have two different versions of a seated hip pose. Okay, those of you in the seated motion, they're both seated. You're trying to use gravity with the heart to go downwards towards the floor. I think that's downwards. Downward pigeon. Okay, come on up. Those of you with the seated foot on block, you just switch sides. Those of us in pigeon, right, you're back here. You're going to swing the left leg forward and maybe roll your shoulders, get that height in the heart, and then take the left leg forward and the right leg back. Okay, and lean into it. So use this bolster as a gap Would you use a round bolster for this one? I don't think that would be great because the sitting bones would be kind of pushing back and overarching. So this is a pretty good version. So leaning down, remember you could use your bolster under your elbows or your blocks under your elbows or a blanket, something here. The lower you go, the more intense it will be. So if I go without any props here, right? If I'm here, it's going to be more into my hip. Those of you on the seated pose have your block or your bolster in front under your left foot, and you can take your ball under the left thigh. So if you're not sure what am I doing with that ball, you just lean over and you put it underneath here. So it's going to require your obliques to kind of get themselves to lift. Otherwise, you're going to be doing this, which is a big X, the rounding. So you've got to use the ball to bring some kind of buoyancy. Okay, so give it a few moments here. So seated, forward fold. So feel that leaning, pigeon or forward fold. And balance the movement from the base of the spine. Now feeling where the hip complex kind of branches here outwards. Even if you're in the seated pigeon pose, like you're the leaning pigeon pose, seated or this version, either version. You are trying to get that back area, the low back to widen. Okay, now, so if you're in pigeon pose, let's say your left pigeon, right, your left side, you want to come around and join us in the seated version. Just have your left foot on top of a block. So if you're here, pigeon, you're going to come around, you're going to put your left foot on the block. And if you need a ball under the right knee, put it under the knee. And then turn to the left, bring your right hand to the left knee, just below the patella. So it's like you're kind of giving your knee a nice little, like handshake. A knee shake, a patella shake, but turning. So twist through the waist. See what a turn is for your torso. So we're finishing the practice with the inner pathway, which is twists and inversions. So feeling that rotation. Okay, notice if you try to push it further to the left, right? I want you to feel the lower abdominals move with the breath. Come back, center. I forgot my sandbag. Place it on the right thigh. Okay. Take one more twist to the left because we got to have a little bit of weight for this part of the liver down into the hip flexor. Psoas muscle. Okay. Okay, now feel that right arm reach up. Lift up, center your chest forward towards your left leg. Breathe. And then let the right arm stretch open. It's kind of easy. Just let it go down. Switch so the sand goes to the left thigh. My left foot goes down. And I change so the right foot goes up on the block. I'm not so focused on how my left foot should be. Should it be close to my bolster? Yeah, I like to find what gives me some realistic space between the joints. So if I pull the foot in, it's going to tighten the knee joint. Pretty reasonable. The collateral ligament is going to just grip up. So it looks cool, but it probably won't feel cool in a decade. So feel the chest lifting and then turning right. Left hand to right leg. It would be nice if we had the wall behind us to our hand, but always improvement. Always room for it. So feel how you turn. You might turn different on the second side and notice, oh, there's a little difference, but accepting, breathing. If it feels like you can get little short breaths with your nostril breathing, that's okay. right? It's working in collaboration with the lungs. Because you're not just breathing through a little nose, right? You're breathing into the wide array of lung force, right? So feeling that movement of breath. Okay, last one here. So turn back center, inhale, and exhale one more time to the right. And if you inhaled and tighten the belly, it happens sometimes, like, oh, how did I do that? I gripped again. But feel the belly move comfortably with your breath. You know, just scanning the inner space, if it's discombobulated, whatever it may be feeling in the center body, we're going to put all the circulation back towards the heart and the brain, kind of flush it out. Okay? So let's take off our sand, put it next to your bolster, and then move the ball if it's there. And let's turn to the wall and take one of your blankets to the side of your mat and then slide off your bolster. Okay, push the bolster next to the wall so it's actually at the wall base. And then I'm going to add my blanket behind me. If you've got many bolsters, you could always stack them up, but it's a lot of work to get your hips that high. So it's probably more effort than you want. Yeah, let's keep it simple. So we got our bolster here. Try to sit on it to the wall. So your seat, I mean, you have to sit this way to the bolster. You can't sit this way. So you're going to sit up onto the bolster on one side, okay? So you got to pick a side of the bolster so the other side of the bolster kind of lifts up, a little seesaw. All right. Now, if you have an eye pillow, get that too. And you're going to walk the feet back towards the wall and then roll down onto your shoulder and then swing the legs up. Now, the word swing is often said in most everything I read about this, but I don't really feel like I swing my legs, but it's a little bit of a lift. So then I scoot so my pelvis is center on my bolster. That's probably the most important piece, right? That you feel centered, so you're making a dent in your bolster. This is where you get your dent, huh? Full blanket in, cozy to the base of the neck, not the brain stem, right? So it's base of the neck. And add the sense of just the legs resting against the wall. So I'm not right to completely sitting bone to wall. I'm in verticality, so reversing that flow back to my heart and brain. That's the key, is the blood flow back up here. All day long, it's the other way. Right, so we're refreshing the heart and the lungs. So taking a sandbag, if you don't feel that you are coordinated right now to get it on your feet, you could let the sand rest at the belly. It's kind of hard to get it at the ribs. It might end up on your throat. So you can always leave it here or bend the legs and feel the hips pressing as your feet push onto the sand and lift up and just let it lean into the wall. Yeah, if you need to reset it and get the sand closer over the toes, you can do that. You can span the feet apart. I think I kind of work that one. So you feel like, okay, my knees are apart. That's a little better than them pushing together. Okay, and then if you want to add anything, like you just happen to have a blanket nearby, you can put that over you. You can lay it over your chest, your hips. Some people like to drape that blanket over their feet and wrap their legs, kind of swaddling. Might seem like a lot to do, but if you ever do this one in your own time, you might do that. Swaddle the legs, really a nice, cozy, warm wrap around the bones. And then feel how the shoulders set back and the chest gently opens. Let your hands rest, whether they're on the floor or under the blanket or on top of it. And just reverse that gravitational pull on the muscles. and the bones. Feel the fluctuation of the breath and how you embody that in the lower belly, as if your focus is simply moving the lower belly with the breath. And then you can just relax that focus, kind of suspend your efforting. Just take a few moments with the idea of not hurrying it, just no hurry. Inversions, they mean that you need to take time or make time to really receive the benefit, but it's the time in the inversion. If you have that eye pillow, it's over your eyes. Otherwise, you have your eyes closed, hopefully. And if you slow down enough, you might notice the heartbeat. Slowing that down, strengthening with the breath, but also relaxing the heart. And all the blood moves back to the heart and the organs, right? Down to the vital organs when the legs are upside down. It's just natural. So the feet might feel cool. They might get tingly. It's a good time to come out if they fall asleep. It's your time. So now let's get a feeling of just moving the feet away from the wall. Soften the knees. And, you know, if the sand falls down the wall next to your rear, that's okay. If you never tried that, it's always kind of funny to do. But you might tend to bend the knees and drop it overhead. I like having the blanket because it squishes a little bit into the organs, a little bit of massage, just bending my knees, even just a little bit, pressing that blanket in. And feeling when the spine has this deep stretch all the way to the kidneys. And that circulation kind of tingling in the feet. Let's just take a moment of rocking back and forth, side to side. And then we'll let the knees go to one side and use that momentum to help you twist and roll and push. And let's meet on our bolster next to the wall and take a moment of sitting in presence for each of us that came to the practice, kind of a dedication in a moment to find that upright spine and bring the hands up to the space in front of the heart and just feeling that lifted heart, inhaling and exhaling, bowing into the space behind your heart in gratitude